Welcome. Again, this is our August virtual learning series. I'm Robert Brathe, president of the Capital Region Albany area American Marketing Association chapter, and we're delighted to have Joelle Leyden with us here today. Joelle is a dedicated master coach and relationship expert, empowering those who strive for excellence. A trusted guide in untangling relationships, she helps clients reforge past patterns and escape self-defeating cycles, fostering personal growth and healing. Joelle developed the 7 Sacred Steps, a unique methodology combining her expertise in education, psychology, and transformational coaching with over a decade of research. Her programs offer trainings, exercises, and tools for fulfilling and resilient relationships. Understanding the frustration of mismatched partnerships, Joelle's holistic approach addresses both internal and external factors. Her year-long programs, retreats, keynotes, and workshops empower clients to cultivate authentic, harmonious, and long-lasting relationships. So I'll put all that in the chat. And once again, we're delighted to have you here today, Joelle, and you have the floor.
Thank you so much, Robert, for your yes. I reached out to you a couple of months ago, said, hey, I'd love to present for you guys. And so thank you so much for your willingness to have me share and then speak to a topic that is near and dear to me. And also the AMA for hosting me and providing this opportunity to connect with you in this way. So today we're talking about building bridges, strengthening your professional relationships through not any old kind of connection, but authentic ones. Which is really a big buzzword, right? To be authentic. And what does that mean? So we're going to really dive into what that is today. But before we jump fully into the content of the call, I'm going to really just start with some logistics so that you are fully supported in receiving the most from this call. So just first check in, pen, paper, if you need that. If there's anything that you want to jot down, you may want to have that handy. So go grab something to write with. I know I'm a big note taker, so that's always a big thing for me. It's also a place to write down questions that we will have a Q&A at the end, so you can jot down your questions so you don't forget. And so that's a great tool to have for you. We're also going to be using this beautiful tool of Zoom as a practice of staying connected. So, and to build bridges. So to that end, I'm going to ask you in advance and invite you to follow some participation guidelines. So to allow for connection, if you can, and it's possible for you, I would invite you to keep your video on. And so if that's possible for you at all, that's really one of the ways that you can practice, even in this virtual environment, to create that connection and build that bridge. If you are able to keep your video on, I'm going to also invite you to avoid distracting sounds or activity in your background. So as a presenter, I'm easily distracted and I'll see like a cat in the background or the child running around or the whatever it is. It just kind of like, whoa, what is that? I'm like chasing the shiny thing. So be mindful of that. And then also to kind of ensure the safety of our Zoom community, make sure that your Zoom name matches your real name. And that way, other people can find you later to continue the conversation, to continue the connection. And then I can also address you by name. Please let me know if I mispronounce it. I know that for myself, I get called all kinds of things. So Joelle is the name. So as I shared, we will have the Q&A at the end, so save your asks until then. Jot them down as they come up. So thank you so much for your willingness to use these Zoom guidelines as your first practice in building authentic connections. So if I think everyone's got their names, but let's also take a moment to type in contact information. That way you can actually reach out to each other after our call time together. We're still a little bit in the logistics, so I will do that right now. So there's my contact information. So go ahead and place yours. You can save the chat at the end of the Zoom call, and I can share how to do that if needed. So that is the end of the logistical portion of things. So let's dive in. So what are we going to talk about today? We're going to dive into the importance of building bridges, the importance of strengthening those relationships, whether they're personal or professional, through those authentic connections, especially at this time in history. We're going to get clarity on how disconnection may show itself in behaviors, both in personal relationships and in professional relationships, and then begin to get some clarity on some key ways, 3 key ways to begin to strengthen your skill set and develop your capacity to create authentic connections in the relationships that matter most to you. So really, this is sort of the direction that we're going. And then for those of you who feel like, you know, I really want to kind of dive deeper into some of the things that you talked about, I will share a way to take this topic of building bridges and strengthening your professional relationships through that authentic connection farther if it feels like a fit. So I'll begin with a bit of an introduction. So my name is Joelle Leiden, and where I want to start with my story, because it could start in so many places, I'm going to start with 2008. And in 2008, I had been a teacher for 21 years. That was my previous career. I was also self-employed part-time. I was running weekend retreats for teachers, but I was also in the throes of a major, major breakup. I had blended a family, we had bought the house, we got the dog, but I had also dug into burnout, overwork, overwhelm, exhaustion, and depression. And that year for me, I can really claim as a year of feeling like a dark night of the soul for me, because I was questioning everything. I was questioning everything about my career. I was questioning everything about being employed, about being self-employed, about being in a relationship, both my romantic relationships and my professional relationships. I couldn't seem to fit anywhere with anyone. And I was just ruminating and like, what, you know, is this what it means to be in a relationship? Is this what it means to be working full time? I'm not feeling fulfilled by it. It's like, I'm trying to get the legs going in my business. Is that what this is like? I feel, you know, it was like really questioning and feeling alone and not able to connect with anyone on any level, or cut out for this, and questioning, like, what was I cut out for? And why was I even here? And through that process of questioning, because I love research and I'm really science-based, I learned about neurodiversity, what's now referred to as neurodiversity, and being neurodivergent, which at that time was called high sensitivity. And so I also learned about the work of Dr. Elaine Aron, and I identified with a lot of what she was talking about with people who can identify with being highly sensitive. And as I learned about high sensitivity, I made a connection that was needed for me to recognize, like, oh, I'm a little bit different. No wonder I didn't fit in. A little bit different from everybody else. Isn't that interesting? And I learned what it meant to be highly sensitive and to be neurodivergent. And I made so many connections that allowed me to shift my perception about everything in my life. You know, what it meant to be in business, what it meant to be in relationship as someone who's highly sensitive, what it meant to be in business as a highly sensitive. You know, so I really started to look at things differently and shifting my perception. And that meant that my marketing, my selling, the operations in my business, all of that started to change because I needed to make it work for me. The way that I related to people, connecting, being authentic with others, letting my freak flag fly, that changed, right? I owned more of who I was. And the building of the bridges in my relationships with others and in my business were no longer being based so much on my socialized training of how I was supposed to behave or what I was supposed to do or the expectations that people had for me, but really on being myself. So I started digging deep and making all kinds of changes to kind of rid myself of like all the expectations in all of my relationships, professional and personal, and just start showing up as me. And in that process, I became a relationship coach. So I was already coaching people as a part-time thing, but I was really working with career shifts. And that really had me land square in the center of doing relationship coaching, teaching others through that 7-step process that Robert mentioned earlier, how to create deep, intimate relationships long term. I even got married in the process, and I've helped many, many, many people find and co-create and maintain long-term relationships through authentic connections, as well as professionally. So before we dive into the content, I have a question for you, and take a moment to jot down the first thing that comes to your mind. What pattern are you seeing currently in either your personal or your professional relationships that kind of are feeling sticky for you, that actually intrigued you to be on the call tonight? So take a moment to just, what are some of the things that you currently seem to be struggling with, that you're hoping to get some answers to from being here tonight? Are you noticing patterns? Is it you? Is it your company systems? Is it the culture? What are the things that feel like sticky wickets? So with that, I will invite anyone who feels courageous enough to step forward and share what feels like a bit of a sticky wicket. When you share, I can actually speak directly to that share so that you can begin to see next steps. So I will offer that. So I will open it up for anyone who's courageous enough and willing to step forward with a place where they're finding a struggle and hoping to get an answer here tonight. Just unmute yourself and jump right in.
I'll be courageous.
Thank you, Maura. I so appreciate you. Thank you for stepping forward.
I think my biggest problem is I need more patience. I want to connect with more people and just have to get myself out there where I just, want to be successful. And I know these things take time when you're starting a new business, but it just feels like sometimes you're going in circles. So I'm just trying to learn to have more patience.
Makes so much sense. Building a business requires two things. And I would invite you to write these down, Maura, and stick them right onto your computer.
Okay.
Patience and perseverance. Patience and perseverance. Wash, rinse, rest, repeat. Right?
Right.
It's just keep that in mind. So that all not only applies to your business, but applies to the relationships, because we are not always well trained or didn't grow up in families, caretaking families, or families of origin, biological families that had really great relational skill sets. So we were trained by people who may or may not have had the right kind of skill set, but we're adult now and we can retrain ourselves out of the things that weren't helpful to us and can now actually meet the current need. So you can upgrade your internal operating, relational operating system. So patience and perseverance. Thanks for bringing that forward, Maura.
Okay.
Anyone else? Beautiful. Robert?
Yeah, I I've been facing some challenges of almost people lacking self-awareness and how to address that when they that there's something going on with the person, but they don't.
Absolutely. My husband and I were actually talking about that last night. And again, when I mentioned earlier that at this moment in history, that disconnection that I think that you're referring to, that lack of awareness, even like physical space awareness is different now, post-pandemic. And also with the working environments that we are in. So that makes a lot of sense, Robert. And we're going to absolutely talk about that as part of this call. Awesome. Well, thank you both for stepping forward. We're just going to kind of dive in then to the heart of today. So a lot of what I'm going to share today is just the tippity tip of the iceberg, and the beginning of the process. And of course, as I shared earlier, I will definitely share how you can take it deeper if you choose. So to begin with, I think it's really important to make sure that we're speaking to the difficulties and the challenges that people are facing around having authentic, truthful, real, open, vulnerable connection, and how that creates disconnection. So where you can see the thing that's going on, but the individual cannot see, where you're like experiencing feelings, but you don't know how to get yourself out of it, like that impatience, right, that you were speaking to earlier, Maura. So I have to say that the remote and the hybrid arrangements, of course, they've become the norm, and also make forging relationships more difficult. Like traditionally, the workplace served as a place of connection. You met at the water cooler. This is a long, long time ago, people, but you met at the water cooler and you had conversation, or you went out for, okay, this is a while ago, you went out for a cigarette break, that was like way back when, and you chatted with people. So to prepare for this, I did a little bit of research because I love research. And according to the Harvard Business Review, the significance of connection is the driving force in the future of work. And when given a choice in a particular, questionnaire, 52 respondents prioritized fostering great relationships with colleagues over a tempting 10% increase in salary. Relationships were more important than an increase in salary, and a staggering 66% of people expressed a lack of strong connection with their coworkers. And the data showed that workers with lower level of connections have stronger intentions to quit, a higher chance of job seeking. And aside from like the real work parameters, what are some of the other challenges that are presented and create that disconnection? The idea that we have to work a 60-hour week, 70, like a long time, busy schedules, overloaded with the responsibilities, very difficult communication skills, lack of communication, our bonds weaken without them, unresolved conflicts, right? They build walls, they hinder connection and understanding, neglected needs, making individuals feel unseen, unheard, insignificant, disconnected from others, and changing priorities. They're shifting goals, right? People kind of drift when their goals change. And of course, the good old, familiar one, which is technology. Technology creating distraction, overusing devices, replacing meaningful interactions, which cause emotional distance, right? So this idea that, I've got 1 million friends on Facebook, but do you really know them? How well do you know them? Which is such a wonderful thing about the AMA and getting together for these coffees, right? Where you get to see each other and like touch each other, smell each other, right? Right? You get to like, oh, wow, I didn't realize you're that tall or that short or that, so you get to really, really connect with people. So there are a lot of implications to those challenges that we are experiencing currently. And a lot of those relationship disconnections will result in conflicts. And so if you can see something that another person cannot see, and you're not willing to have a conversation with them, and you don't feel comfortable because it could create conflict, right? It leads to toxicity in a relationship. It's kind of like if you have a glass of clear water, right? And that's the initial relationship. And you stick one drop of red ink in it. That red ink is not just going to stay in one little bubble in this clear glass of water. It's going to infect the entire thing. It's going to infuse the entire clear glass of water, so everything will become red. So conflict is a really big piece. And polarization. We're in a time historically where there's division, there's othering, there's blaming, there's shaming, all kinds of crazy stuff is going on. And it really leaves people feeling lonely, feeling misunderstood, feeling frustrated, overwhelmed, impatient, anxious, stressed, defended, angry, shame. So that's a lot that we're dealing with in our current historical time, both in personal and in professional relationships. So let's just take a deep breath in and let it out, because that is a lot. So what is the antidote? Right? Because we're here to get an antidote, a prescription, a solution. So again, back to the Harvard Business Review, one of the things that they mentioned was that one of the antidotes to professional disconnection is to promote friendship, friendliness, and meaningful, authentic professional connections. Relationships, whether they're personal or professional, that are built on trust. And I think that's an important word for you to write down. That's a key piece. That to build authentic relationships, whether professional or personal, you have to build trust. And the greatest skill set that you can develop in building that trust and in building that authenticity and creating that authentic relationship is the skill set of resilience. Because you're never going to get it right the first time. Sometimes things are going to come out sideways, and you're going to have to backtrack and go like, oh gosh, I'm going to have to go back again and go back into this interaction and say like, that totally came out the wrong way. I am so sorry. I really meant, this is what I really in my heart meant to say it this way. So that ability to build resilience and discomfort with the process of developing the skill set of resilience. And so what is resilience? Let me just give you a definition. It's actually the ability to withstand or recover quickly from difficulty. That's all it is. That's what resilience is. And there are 3 ways that we can do that. And I'm just going to, as I shared earlier, just kind of touch on them today. And as I said, later we can go into it a little bit deeper if that's something that you're interested in. So the 3 sort of ways that you can begin to build that resilience is first, look at yourself. Second, develop your people skills. And third, schedule time to build relationships. So let's take that first one and dive in and unpack that a little bit. So that first way to strengthen your professional relationships through authentic connection is to look at yourself first. by identifying your own relationship needs. It's not selfish. It's not self-serving. It's not ego-driven, but really sit in these questions. Do you know what you need from others? Do you know what they need from you? And even reflecting on those needs, like that's a great place to start. And why is this important? Because understanding what those needs are for yourself and for others and what they need from you can be instrumental in building relationships. So how do you do that? Well, I would first start with taking some time to think about those questions for yourself. What are your relationship needs? What do you sense other people need from you? And then use your strength of empathy, compassion, to put yourself in other people's shoes to better know what they need from you. And then when you're interacting and you're clear on what your relationship needs, then you can actually be truthful, authentic in your communications with them. That builds trust, truth, authenticity. And therefore, you can then provide what they want. You can ask for what you need. And then you can also give with a generous heart. Versus feeling resentful because you automatically answered their question of what they needed from you without any consideration. It was just a knee-jerk reaction, what you always do. I say yes to something that you could have truthfully and authentically and lovingly said no to. Yeah, but I'm willing to do this part of it. And then you can be generous. Now, shame researcher Brené Brown, you may have heard of her work. I love that work that she has done on shame. She says that the most compassionate people are also the most boundaried. That means they've really taken the time to think about their needs. It's because that level of clarity keeps you out of resentment, so you can continue to come from a place of compassion and empathy, which then allows everyone, including yourself, to feel heard, to feel seen, to feel understood, to feel gotten, to feel like you matter. Now that's a way to authentically strengthen your relationship. So that's the first way. The second way to strengthen your professional relationships through authentic connection is to develop your people skills. When I first started, my people skills sucked. Literally, they were horrible. I was horrible. I couldn't figure out, as I shared with you earlier, I'm like, why don't I fit in? I don't get it. Like, why can't I see how people, why do I always want to have like these deep conversations? And like, why is everybody else satisfied with the conversations that are here? And I don't get that. And like, I had to really develop my own personal people skills and retrain myself from what I was taught. And then support my clients in being able to do the same, because we've not all learned beautiful people skills from beautiful parental units, caretakers who had beautiful people skills that they passed down to us, right? So we have to kind of retrain ourselves. And the wonderful thing is that our brain is so brilliant, and the research shows that we can learn until the day we die. So that old adage of you can't teach old dog new tricks is no longer true. So the second way to strengthen your professional relationships is to develop your people skills. This is related to that first one, right, of identifying your relationship needs. So those strong, authentic relationships start with good people skills. So let me ask you a couple of questions. Think on this one. Not meant to activate shame or blame or anything, but how do you deal with intense emotions? How do you personally deal with conflict? What's your response to stress? To misbehavior from others? Do you fly off the handle? Do you want to burn down their village? Do you run to another room? Do you try to appease and people please to try to reduce the intense feeling, to try to like control and manage them so that you no longer have to feel all the anxiety and the stress, right? Because it's a lot. It's just like whoa, surge of intense physiological experience. So developing your people skills is all about developing your own discomfort resilience. And that goes back to your thing, Maura, about patience. Because it doesn't happen overnight. We've been doing this for a long time. I'm 61. I've been doing this for a long time, right? That retraining process takes time, right? It's developing your people. It's, as I said, it's about developing your discomfort resilience, but it's also about developing your emotional intelligence. Staying in the game, no matter what, connected. When I used to fight with my broke my heart blended family partner, I would basically like blow down his village and then run out of the room. That was my reaction to that stress. And so it was like I was severing the connection. And I had to retrain myself in being in a stress response and stay connected. That takes some doing, right? But when you learn to manage your own nervous system in real time, and you have practices that help you do that, in situations that activate intense emotion, you're actually in a position of leadership. Because if you can manage your nervous system when you're in a stressed response, you can actually direct the situation for an outcome that is in the highest good for all involved, creating a win-win versus shaming, blaming, even in your head, leaving the conflict unresolved to fester and rot the relationship. And as I share with all of my clients, the one who is the most resourced, meaning they have the most openness, they have the most regulation and space available, is the leader in the relationship. So you want to be able to develop those people skills, especially and in particular in this time of history, where those can be activated really easily because of the othering and the dividing and the blaming and the shaming and all that, right? How can you stay grounded and anchored and centered so you can lead in the relationship? All right, let's take another deep breath in and let it out. So the third way to strengthen your professional relationships through connection is to schedule time to build relationships. Like actually schedule it. My husband and I at the end of 2024, I said, get your planner out. I got my planner out because I lost my parents. It was been crazy couple of years for us. And we got kind of like two ships that pass in the night. And I said, we need to schedule in our 2024 calendar every month, date night. Why? Because life had gotten busy. And although we love each other dearly, spontaneity, play, all of that stuff took a back seat. And so what we did was created opportunity monthly for us to connect. It's not that we're not connecting in between, we do, but this is purposeful connecting time, which is a monthly opportunity for us to surprise each other and return the adventure to the relationship back to our plate. So you want to consciously create time to build your relationships. It's an opportunity to appreciate others, practice mindful listening, drawing in your strength of curiosity, empathy, intuition, compassion, to then be of highest service and support to the person that you're in relationship with, your professional relationships, as well as personal. So much of our sense of disconnection can be resolved by having conscious and consistent practices in place to strengthen those relationships through that trust, which then leads to more authenticity and connection and resilience. So those are the 3 ways that you can kind of get started. And as I said, they're just the tippity tip of how to do this. So, you know, we've covered like the difficulties that we're currently experiencing with disconnection, both personal and professional, and how that kind of shows up and how that can feel. I shared with you some interesting research from Harvard Business School, and covered 3 ways that you can begin to shift from feeling disconnected to strengthening those connections. First, by looking at yourself, looking at your own relationship needs, developing your own people skills, and third, by scheduling time to build those relationships. So that is it. As I said, just cover the tippy tip of the iceberg. So it wouldn't make sense to try to cover all of this because there's much, much more we can cover in just the time that we have. But I do want to share with you how you could take it further if this feels like a fit for you. I'm offering a unique opportunity for you and I to connect for private 2-part laser coaching session where you could bring a specific relational issue that you're having trouble with for like a deep dive into kind of a strategic and heart-led solution. So what it would look like is 2 sessions, one that's 60 minutes. So it's a deep dive where you and I will both connect. It's a private session. And then a 30-minute follow-up session to do a kind of a check-in on how the next steps that we co-created together went, and then support you with any kind of next steps that is needed from there. So what that would look like is that, you know, you'll register if that feels like a good fit for you. You want to take advantage of this opportunity. You'll complete a questionnaire. You'll get to share the exact nature of the issue, and then we'll schedule and hold your first 60-minute private laser coaching session. And I'll bring all of my strengths, including my strategic strength and all of my experience to bear in service of this issue to co-create your next doable steps. And it could be, you know, issues that are personal or professional, related to family or a partner or a coworker, hiring, firing, addressing difficult conversations, a situation that's causing anxiety for you, frustration, keeping you up at night. And what we co-create together will be to support you in stepping into being more of a leader in your relationship authentically. So at the end of that first call, we will schedule a second 30-minute follow-up call to check in and handle any sort of niggly wigglies. So it's a total of 90 minutes dedicated exclusively to you. Yay! So typically I charge between $250 to $400 for a 30-minute session. And depending on the level of programming that I'm working with the client, and I usually work a minimum of a year with a client. So this is actually a really unique opportunity. I don't do this. I don't do one-offs. But I thought this would be a great opportunity to connect in this way. So it would be an opportunity to work with me over the course of 2 sessions that add up to like 90 minutes, plus any of the work that I'm doing in between to really serve and support and prepare for you. And that would be for $475 for the 2 sessions. So I'm going to put a link on in the chat for you. And all you'd need to do is to just click on the link in the chat, register at that link. And once you've taken that step, you'll receive an automated email that includes 2 things: a place for you to register to schedule your first session, and then the questionnaire. And then that's it. And then we would get ourselves started on the road to supporting you with next steps in regards to that relationship issue. So that is it. I'm gonna close it here. I'll leave that link open and leave it available for you if you think that you want to think about it a little bit, and you know, keep it open until Sunday. So between now and Sunday, that $475 for the 2 sessions would be made available to you. So from here, let's just open up for questions for either content of what I delivered today or on building bridges or any other part of taking advantage of the opportunity to take it deeper. So again, opening it up for Q&A. So just unmute yourself and we can get started. I can answer any of your questions. Lynn, are you? Yep.
Yeah, I had a quick question. Do you treat individual people or do you work with couples or?
I love that question, Lynn. So right now I'm working primarily with men and women singly, and my next level is working with couples. So I'm getting ready to start doing that. Thanks, Lynn.
Awesome.
My absolute pleasure.
I just had a comment. I really liked your schedule time to build relationships piece. I think that's really stuck with me in terms of current or future, or maybe how to fix something that might I might want to rekindle professionally or personally. So I'm definitely going to work on that this week. So thank you.
My absolute pleasure. It's a lot of people think like, what? Put it in the calendar? That's so like not romantic. Let me tell you, it really has been very fun from a personal perspective, but also what I've noticed is if it's not scheduled, it doesn't happen. Other things happen. And then the thing that you wanted to do and the priority that you wanted to have kind of gets plopped to the bottom of the list and then gets moved to the next week, to the next week, to the next week, to the next week, and then never happens. And then you get to continue to feel kind of like disconnected. Yeah. It's a way to keep the cycle going inadvertently. Any other
Yeah,
questions?
I have
or
to say, I
comments?
also,
Thank
I'm
you,
sorry,
Mark.
I also appreciated that point because for me, it has looked like that scheduling will look like in the case of a coworker, a going to lunch, taking things off premises. Because then that way we have opportunity to speak privately. My department is quite small, so it's just the two of us. But if, say, for instance, we need to, talk about certain things, or if there is a bit of a conflict, it's better. I find that it's better to place us to place myself and to place that person in a situation where we're public. And so then people have to behave as if there are people around them that, so that's definitely going to limit arguing. It's going to limit voices being raised. People, we act with a certain decorum simply because we're in a public place, and hopefully somewhat more relaxed, because lunch gives you the opportunity to just kind of relax for a little bit. And so that I've found has definitely worked for me.
That's a genius move, Marquita. Right? For the reasons you mentioned, but also because it's neutral ground.
Yeah.
Right? So energetically, it doesn't have like, it's really neutral ground. And so that takes some of the squishiness, not a real word, but you know what I'm saying, I think.
Yeah.
Right? Some of that energetic niggly off the table, so that true conversation can be had. Yeah. Beautiful. Anyone else? Awesome. Well, for those of you who feel like you'd like to take it a little bit deeper, you've got the link. Save if you want to connect with one another after our time today. There's a way to save that the chat with everybody's information. If you go down to the chat box, so you click the chat box and it pulls everything up, you'll see the little 3 buttons. If you click on that, it'll bring up a little thing that says save chat, and you can save the chat, and then that'll give you all the information of, I think Robert put some earlier Eventbrite, the next upcoming Eventbrite pieces, so that'll be in there. The descript, my bio's in there, and then connection information about everybody else, so you can reach out to each other beyond this Zoom container and time together. So that is it. Such an honor and a pleasure to speak with you tonight. And thank you, Robert, again for the opportunity to do so.
And thank
And
you.
hand it back to you.
Thank you.
All right. Well, have a good night, everybody. I hope to see some of you on our virtual networking tomorrow at 3, and definitely check our calendar out and see you all very soon. Have a good night, everybody.
Thanks a
Alrighty.
lot.
Good night.